Hi everyone, thanks for tuning in here on this Friday to end the week. Another really busy week. We've had a lot of buyers getting around and multiple offers. As we talked about earlier in the week, it's still been quite hectic on that front. A few more properties have gone under contract, so lots of action. In our office, as you might have noticed, if you're watching this on Facebook, we're right in the thick of a huge advent calendar. We're a few days in and we've had a few lucky winners already. More coming up over the weekend. We've got going right through December. So if you've got people up to a few days before Christmas, it finishes for the Christmas draws. So if you're wanting to be a part of that and win some of the great prizes, make sure you're on Facebook and you're commenting and getting involved in that. We've got some great prizes still to come over the next couple of weeks. We've got a couple of reports I want to talk about today that have just came out over the last couple of days, which are fairly interesting in relation to the Tassie and the national market. So we've got the REIA Housing Affordability Report, which has come up, just reading that one this morning and looking at what's been released in that. So that talks about the cost. We've got it on screen there. So talking about the cost of the housing in relation to the weekly family income. So looking at that, we'll leave that up there for a few seconds while I talk through it. But Tassie down the bottom, average family income or household income there, we're looking at $1,519 per week, and that's 28.8% of what it would cost to own a home in Tasmania. And looking at some of those other states, we're seeing New South Wales up at 42%, ACT's down at 22, Victoria 35, Queensland 30, South Australia 28. So all those ones are up above us apart from the ACT. So we're below the national average. We're well above Northern Territory, ACT and Western Australia though, so, and just above South Australia. So really that's pretty expensive compared to looking at one of those 4 or 5 years ago where you might have found that Tassie was the cheapest or second cheapest in relation to that. So 28.8%. Look, it's still a lot lower than some of those big cities, but obviously that's starting to trend upwards and upwards compared to where it has been. Another report that we'll have a look at, and we'll put the link through in the show there wherever you're watching, which is the CoreLogic Hedonic Home Value Index report, and that's just came out. They do that each month, so that's December's version of that, ending November. We're looking at the change in dwelling values is the biggest thing that's tracked in that, and they're looking at it capital cities, regional in each state, so it's quite detailed. If you want to have a look at that, it's quite interesting. But we've seen Hobart. So I'll talk about Hobart a bit, and then I'll talk about the region of Tassie. So Hobart's 1.4% up for the month, 2.9% up for the quarter, and 5.6% up for the year to 505,000 as the median dwelling across the city and all suburbs. Then regional Tas, we've seen up 2% in the past month, 3% in the past 3 months. So the 3% in the past 3 months is about the same as the state-wide, but then looking over the 12 months, that's up at 10.7% regional Tasmania versus 5.6% in the city. So you can see the push for regional. We know Hobart market was well ahead of the rest of the state. They'd probably had a 50, 60% increase over the last 5 years, where most of regional Tassie's probably been more in that 20 to 40% rise. So looking like regional Tassie's probably got a bit more to go with the COVID push and the fact that they're behind the Hobart City. I think there's going to be much more growth in the regional markets in 2021 than probably the city market, partially just due to where the value point's at in relation to that income level in the city, and in the regional areas it's still much more affordable, so you can get some really good buys in there. Nationally, we're seeing that trending a bit. So combined capital cities over the last 12 months now sits at 2.4% up. Combined regional Australia is up at 5.7%. So most of the story is the same, looking across each state apart from WA, that the regional market's up more than the city market, and that's sort of been continuing. I think we'll see that picking up and going the other way in WA, but their market's kind of on the opposite side to the Sydney and Melbourne markets, so they've been through a tough time. So their city will probably go up first, and then their regional markets to follow. But yeah, interestingly, looking at that, Tassie is really performing well. Probably part of that we see also is the listing. So further to our webinar the other night, we were talking with Jason about the detail there. Now there's some stats I'm looking at that's got 2016, 2017, 2018, 2019 and 2020 looking at the rolling listings. And most years that's been sitting at around the 200,000 listings on the market as a rolling 28-day count across the country. And at the moment, it's the lowest for sure in all of those years by a significant amount. It's just around the 150,000 mark for 2020. So that's almost a quarter less properties on the market than what there would be normally. The sales volume, though, is very solid, and that's looking like it's about the same as what you would see normally across in all those markets. So looking around the 35 to 40,000 sales a month, and that's been pretty consistent for the last 2 or 3 years. Looking at those graphs, so the listings are down, the sales are solid. Seems like that's going to continue. We've got auction clearance rates having a real upturn over the last month or two in Melbourne and Sydney, hearing some crazy stories out of those markets from some agents over there. So looks like it's going to be a very buoyant market for the next few months. Lots more to digest if you want to have a look at that report yourself. But really, we're seeing unit prices down. There's probably the other thing, rolling 3-month average unit prices have crashed and house prices have gone up. So unit prices are down 2% nationally, house prices are up 1.5%. So that's just in a very short term. We expect those unit prices to continue to trend down and the houses to continue to go up. So anyway, thanks for tuning in. For all that have stayed on and watched that. Probably a bit of boring data for some people, and something exciting if you are moving states or looking at buying investment properties or interested in the financial markets. It's certainly something to keep an eye on, those reports, and keep looking at them because they're quite insightful if you're wanting to keep an eye on the market. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you on Monday with our weekend update.